Good afternoon. My name is Marrelie Victor and I head up the Financial Advisors and Intermediary Services Department. I've been part of the team that worked on the Omni Conduct of Business Return, or otherwise known as the Omni CBR, and more recently I've been giving support in terms of the development of the Omni-risk return. In this webinar, the FSCA introduces the Omni-risk return. The webinar will also accompany a publication that includes the Omni-risk return template, an explanatory notes, that will offer detail around the Omni-risk return template, including the structure, purpose of each data point, and how the FSCA will use this information. I would first like to take a few steps back to provide context. In May 2025, the FSCA published its new regulatory strategy for the period 1 April 2025 to the 31st of March 2028. Critical to this strategy is the need to modernize the FSCA's regulatory capabilities. In other words, streamlining licensing processes, enhancing risk-based supervision, and enabling a more efficient and effective data collection and analysis to ensure quicker and more targeted responses to emerging risks and trends. As such, the FSCA has adopted a multi-year organization-wide digital transformation strategy, which includes major investments in new and enhanced technology. The most notable has been the procurement of a supervisory technology platform, namely the Integrated Regulatory Solution, otherwise known as the IRS. The IRS will significantly improve how the FSCA engages with financial institutions in future. On 6 June this year, the FSCA published FSCA General Communication 12 of 2025. This communication provided an update on the rollout and implementation of the Omni CBR for financial institutions as previously communicated by the FSCA. The conceptualization and development of the Omni CBR predated the rollout of the FSCA's digital transformation strategy and the procurement of the IRS. To a certain extent, previous iterations of the Omni CBR attempted to achieve similar objectives to the IRS, but were designed for largely manual and less modernized supervisory environments. Consequently, we communicated that the Omni CBR will no longer be rolled out in the format and manner previously communicated, and introduced the Omni-risk return to support the automated risk model that forms the core of our IRS. The above approach towards conduct reporting has been revised in an attempt to significantly reduce the amount of data requested from financial institutions and to minimize regulatory burden. We have sharpened our focus on key priorities to ensure that our organization is more modernized, that it is future fit, and that as a regulator, we are equipped to respond in a more agile and timely way to rapid shifts that we see in the sector and also in the broader external environment. Underpinning all of this is ensuring that we are ready to transition our policy area, licensing, supervisory and enforcement approaches to align with the principles of outcome-based posture under the Conduct of Financial Institutions Bill. The broader context is important to consider where we are, where we're heading, and what we require from the industry. The work that we've been doing on the IRS, the Omni-risk return, and other components of our digitalization strategy has been very collaborative. And it has been an effort across the organization. All our core functions, policy, licensing, supervision, and enforcement have all been part of this journey. During the course of this webinar, I will be handing over to various members of the team. They will provide a summary and outline of the broader IRS project, where the Omni-risk return fits in, and they will provide details on the consultation process that is about to kick off on the 1st of October. I have to emphasize that this project will only be a success with the support of the industry. We urge you to use this consultation and engagement period in a meaningful way, especially because we need to be mindful of certain broader strict timelines and deliverables that is driving this work. Now, I want to introduce our speakers. Firstly, I will be handing over to Ms. Phokeng Mogase, who's our CIO. She has been a key driver of our digital transformation strategy and the IRS implementation, and she will provide a refresher on the broader IRS project and touch a bit on how the Omni-risk return will fit into that. We also have Ms. Loraine van Deventer. She has been an absolute key in leading and developing the risk model that forms the central engine of the IRS and the data that will be collected via the risk return, which will form the foundational source of data that we will need, that will feed into the risk engine. Loraine will talk to the risk model and give a bit of detail on the Omni-risk return. Juanita has worked to put together a plan of engagement and support activities to help industry understand the details of the risk return, and she will present the detail of those activities and some key timelines. Ms. Athule Mpandle also provides support to the project from our communication department perspective, and she will facilitate a question and answer session towards the end of the webinar. We also have Mr. Akashen Rampersadh joining us. He would be our key contact person for any queries on the Omni-risk return going forward. His contact information will be provided as part of the documents that we publish. And I also have to mention that a dedicated mailbox has been designed and created for purposes of dealing with queries that you might have during the process of considering the Omni-risk return. With that, I thank you and I hand over to Ms. Phokeng, who will take us through the strategy. Thanks.
Marrelie, thank you. Thank you very much for making this time. Just to build on Marrelie has already shared, I'm going to cover a bit of background around what informed the IRS as a project, as such a big investment and focus for the FSCA. I will also share with you why the need for the IRS, what are the challenges, and what were the opportunities that we identified when we considered IRS. I would also be touching on implementation phases of the IRS and pilot phase. This would be specifically important for you to pay attention to so that you can understand what is in the pipeline and what the expectations are going to be from a readiness point of view. I will also touch on the overall IRS implementation roadmap, also just giving you insights on how far we are and how far are we off from the pilot phase. In March this year, 2025, at the FSCA conference, we shared with you our digital transformation strategy. This has been a strategy that we've adopted since 2023, where we put ourselves and challenged ourselves to consider our ways of work, our efficiencies, our customer experience, and how well we use our data in order to improve our regulatory practices. We want to be responsive, we want to be accessible, we want to be efficient, and we want to be effective. And we want to do that by making sure that our processes can be seamless and integrated. We also want to make sure that when we engage with you, we are consistent and we have standardized processes that enhance your convenience. We also consider that there's a lot of data that we consume, that we collect from you, but how effective are we really using that data? We started reimagining how we can use data more effectively to support our decision making. This is at the backdrop of the bedrock of our digital transformation strategy. With you as our customers, the regulated entities, all our stakeholders in the middle of the decisions that we're going to make around technology investments. If we focus our attention on you as our customers, we could not assume what we believe you are interested in. We could not assume what we believe your frustrations are. So what we then did, we issued out a survey in which a lot of you responded. We identified customer challenges, and we also listened to some of the improvements that you then also suggested. What we picked from that survey that we ran is that there's a lot of frustrations around the current portals and process inconsistencies within the FSCA. We noted that. We also picked that there are frustrations with turnaround times. There's been, one of the harsh feedback that we received. It's one of the respondents mentioned that, it's starting to feel like when they engage with us, it feels like a black hole. And of course, as harsh as it may sound, we had to stand in the discomfort of that feedback and consider how do we then improve our turnaround times? What are the root causes of that? And what do we need to look into that to make sure that we solve for it? We also noted some frustrations with manual processes. These manual processes, we are somewhat automated currently. However, we still have a large number of manual processes, which we had pre-identified, but it was also quite interesting to realize just how those manual processes have impacted you as our customers, and we had to solve for that. And this is where primarily where IRS comes in. So the need for IRS was really informed by our desire to be responsive, accessible, and proactive. But also, it was also informed by some of the challenges that you shared with us, like I've just shared with you. But we've also noted other challenges that were not necessarily mentioned that we reflected on, like data overload and data complexity. We do know that we're collecting, all of us, anybody in the economic that plays in the economy collects more data than they've ever done before. It is said that the amount of data that is collected every day doubles every 12 hours. If you think of that, you can then appreciate the load of data that we're having to deal with, the opportunity that it also presents. We saw an increasing expectation for us to be proactive in our oversight, and without being seamless and having integrated and streamlined processes, this would be quite a big mission for us. Another challenge that we spotted is that we have limited human resources. And this is not unique to the FSCA only. As organizations, there are shortage of skills in especially more technical areas, whether it's within the technology space, the regulatory space, or even the finance space. The limited resources we all know about. But we also know that technology is far and reaching, and that we have the opportunity to take advantage of it so that we can augment some of our stuff that we have. We've noted with your frustrations that we can be fragmented in our communication at times to you. And that as a challenge is a challenge that we could not sit on, but rather needed to solve for it. The IRS is such a platform that is going to allow us to simplify our data management, to leverage automation of processes, to apply advanced analytics so that it can enhance our risk-based supervision, and to also centralize our communication. So these are some of the challenges and the solution or the opportunities that our IRS system presents to us. To go in it more detail, it is for us an end-to-end regulatory solution. And it had to be end-to-end because for us, what was quite critical was to make sure that at any given point, we have a 360 view, real-time consolidated entity view. It's quite important to have a unified system that provides for such an entity profile, as it does enhance how we communicate with you. It reduces that fragmented communication that you talk about, and it also helps us in some of our regulatory practices, whether it's risk rating. So that single view of an entity view was quite critical, and with this solution we are going to be able to do that. It does also provide a one platform that enhances our industry interactions. And when you deal with a single platform that gives you this end-to-end integrated processes, the left hand always will know what the right hand is doing. Something that will then emerge as value to you as our customers, because it will improve how we engage with you. It will improve our turnaround times. It will also improve our accessibility and consistency. We all know about coffee, and coffee is eminent. So one of the big decisions that we had to make was to make sure that we built the solution to be future ready, to take into consideration the future reforms that we know of. And so we've had to make that consideration, and to as much as we know about coffee today, that we make sure that we build it in. So it is because of the flexible architecture that will enable also even enhancement for future that we may not know of today. The flexible architecture will also provide for that. Our decision to be future ready was to also make sure that this change is big for the FSCA, and it's going to be big for you too. But we need to make sure that we have minimal disruption during the transition from the current dispensation to the coffee dispensation. So the decision to be future ready, once again, was also made with you in mind. We also communicated in March that we will be implementing the IRS in 3 phases. What we also did communicate is that in between phase 2 and phase 3, we will be we will get in touch with you around that time to share with you information about our industry engagement. We said we will share with you information about preparation for the pilot. We also said whatever information that we have for preparation for Go Live, we will also share it. What we also said in March about the pilot is that we will make a call for a sample of customers to invite them to participate in our pilot. So when we do call out for that participation, our wish is that you would raise your hand and come and test with us. What it would give you in return is an opportunity to experience the functionality upfront, but it would also help us validate the submissions of the returns functionality. When we are done with phase 3, when we prepare for Go Live, we made a commitment that there will be support for Go Live. We're still making that commitment. We will publish some online resources, training sessions, infographic videos. We will establish a support center. We will also provide a capability, online meeting scheduling capability that can allow you the opportunity when we get there to also schedule meetings with us in the event that other avenues through the support center have not worked for you. We still committed to that support for Go Live. So what I want to emphasize at this point is that we are coming to you today because we have reached that midpoint between phase 2 and phase 3. And we are now ready to share some information with you. Later on, my colleagues will be talking to you a little bit more detail around the risk module and how does that impact you. They will also be sharing with you about the returns, the Omni-risk returns, and how that impacts you in the next few slides to come. But for now, let me just share with you the overarching roadmap so you just have an idea of where we are to date. We started in April 2024. We finished all our current existing returns, have been built and have been automated. What we are currently doing, we are reviewing those existing returns for consolidation, and we're considering if there's any other returns that may need to be built that we may have left out, that if they come up here, we will also outline. But should there be a need for us to consult on these, should there be any material changes that relates to the current returns, we will certainly get in touch with you. But for now, the focus of today will be on the Omni-risk returns. As you can see here, for the module itself, we're 84% there. We've done the initiations, we've done the planning, we've built the risk model and the Omni-risk return. Currently, back at the ranch, our teams are hard at work testing this risk module. Parallel to that, we made an undertaking. You'd recall on the previous slide, I mentioned that we said when we reach phase 2, we will touch base with industry for consultation and engagement on returns and basically phase 1 and phase 2. And we've reached that stage, and hence this video. So the the consultations will happen between now and December. And thereafter, we will then start sharing information with industry around system readiness. What this basically means is that what do you need to have ready in terms of preparing for our go live with your IT systems. That information is our plan to start sharing it with industry between January and March next year. And then we will also be making a call as part of the pilot readiness, a call for those that want to participate in the pilot phase. Once we have those in place, we will then start training them. We will train the industry for pilot training, but this will be for the sample of those ones that will be piloting with us, and then we'll start the pilot around June, July. So this is the roadmap that we have around that. So please be mindful of these dates. On phase 3, which is in our view the most intricate and the most complex phase to be undertaken in this project, will consider our very core processes, our licenses, enforcement and supervision planning. We are deep in advanced stages of our planning on these ones. And once we have finalized those, we will have better insights or better details of how the timelines look like. But for now, what I'd like you to note is especially the industry dates that are going to be shared with you, but also just consider what's coming after the engagement, which is preparation for the pilot phase. At this point, I'd just like to hand over to my colleague, Loraine, who's then going to take you through detail around the risk module and the Omni-risk return. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Phokeng. So whilst the CIO has set the broader context of our digital transformation journey and how the RS fits into it, in my part of the presentation, I will be focusing on our new supervisory risk model, which will be powered by the RS, and what the model is designed to achieve. The objective of the model is to enhance our ability to assess and manage risks across financial institutions in a consistent and a data-driven manner. Importantly, the model applies to all financial institutions across the financial sector, and this is really to enable us to obtain a common baseline of institutional risk. At a strategic level, the model aims to ensure consistency in our supervisory work, and like Phokeng indicated, reduce duplication, both for us as supervisors and for the industry in terms of reporting. But before we get, I think, into the key features of the new model, it is important to explain the challenges we are experiencing with the current approach and why the shift to the new model is necessary. There are several challenges in our current approach that the new model is specifically designed to address. I have listed some of the main challenges on the slide. The first one relates to the fact that we have multiple risk profiles. So institutions within licenses across different sectors have multiple and often different risk profiles. This makes it extremely difficult to get a holistic view and understanding of what an institution's overall risk profile is. We further have limited supervisory visibility. So why do I say that? We currently don't have a consolidated view of the risks across the different sectors that is easily accessible. To get it requires quite a bit of manual effort, making it harder to identify cross-sector risks early in the process. We also have challenges with inconsistent ratings, mainly due to our siloed risk assessments, as the different supervisory teams currently use different risk rating methodologies, which often results in conflicting outcomes. Also, our current approach requires a lot of manual effort. There's very little automation in our risk assessment processes. The supervisors must actually manually review every return they receive. And as you are very well aware, the reconciliation and analysis of data is quite resource intensive. Lastly, this is a common issue raised by industry, is the duplication in reporting. And here I'm not even referring to duplication across different regulators, but actually within the FSCA itself. So institutions, particularly those holding multiple licenses, are often required to submit the same information to different FSCA functions. So this results in unnecessary duplication, high compliance costs for industry, and also increased administrative burden for both FSCA and the industry. So what does the new model look like in practice? So firstly, it will provide for a single consolidated risk profile for institutions, as it will combine all license activities into one holistic real-time risk view. It will also create a central data repository. So this means that supervisory data from multiple sources will sit in one integrated system, which will not only improve access to that data, but it will also eliminate the need for duplicated reporting. It will further enhance cross-functional visibility because the information is shared across the different functions, enabling faster and more coordinated supervisory responses. The model further provides for standardized and automated assessments, and this will happen through harmonized criteria, which most importantly will reduce inconsistencies amongst the various supervisory functions. Lastly, the model is designed around structured risk matrix, so it provides for clear risk categories, indicators, as well as quantitative and qualitative measurements. However, we do recognize that machines cannot replace human insight. So this is also why the model will continue to allow for supervisory judgment where that context is needed. To support this model, we have developed the Omni-risk return, and my colleagues have referred to it previously. And this return will provide the required data to actually to run the model. So as was previously communicated, the Omni-risk return is replacing the Omni-CBR. So with the IRS now in place, we have an opportunity to rethink how we collect supervisory data and also how we use that data, making the process more streamlined. You will notice similarities in some of the focus areas covered in the return, but the level of detail in the risk return is less granular than before, and it's also less voluminous. It is important to note that as we move forward, there may still be a need to request additional sector-specific data, but we will discuss that a little bit later. So as stated, the Omni-risk return is one of the main data inputs in the model. It is structured into 12 sections. Each section captures a specific dimension of an institution's operations, its governance, or its risk profile. Definitions are provided to ensure consistency across the sectors. We will also be requiring a governing body or executive member to sign a declaration. And this is just to add some accountability at senior management level to ensure that what is submitted is actually accurate and that's complete, and that it's validated internally before it reaches the FSCA. So as regards the frequency of the submission, at this stage, we expect the return to be submitted annually, but the frequency may be adjusted as the model and our supervisory approach evolve and mature. So this slide just gives you a high-level indication of the focus areas. So as you can see, the return is divided into 12 sections, each focusing on a different aspect of risk. Sections 1 to 3 cover ownership, geographical presence, and governance. Sections 4 to 6 focus on customers, assets, and transaction activity. Section 7 to 9 look at products, communication, and complaints. And sections 10 to 12 cover IT data governance, outsourcing, and financial data. So the return will be published with an explanatory note, which will explain per subsection in the return why we require the specific data points and how we will be using it in our supervisory processes. I think it is important to note that that some of the data points can serve multiple purposes, and it also can influence more than one risk score, and its interpretation may vary depending on the context. So just keep that in mind when reading through the explanatory note. And perhaps just to illustrate by way of an example, a high transaction volume may signal operational resilience, whilst the opposite may signal potential challenges. But conversely, high transaction volume may increase the level of systemic risk exposure of an institution, which then increases the importance of effective controls, resilience, and operational safeguards. It is also worth mentioning that from past experience, we have learned that the best way to develop a return is to start with the risk we want to measure and not the data that we want to collect. So in developing this model, we first determined the risk categories and identified the specific risk indicators that we want to monitor. We then also developed specific measurements for each indicator, and we have 54 indicators in total, and they are all quantitative in nature. So only after that we actually design the questions for the return, making sure that every question ties directly to a data point needed for one of the measurements. So in short, every data point requested in the return links back to an indicator and is required to calculate a risk using a predefined measurement. This whole process is automated, which means I can confidently assure you that all the information you provide will be used, and it will be used immediately. So nothing is collected just for the sake of collecting, and nothing is going to sit in our archives gathering dust. So at a very high level, how will we use the data from the risk return? So what we collect directly informs how we supervise and regulate. So we will use it as part of our risk-based supervision approach. So the risk scores that will be generated through the model will determine the frequency and the depth of our supervisory engagement with you. The model will further flag early signs of customer harms or control failures that would enable us to intervene timeously. We will be able to do some comparative analysis to reveal trends and outliers and focus areas across the industry. It will further enable us to identify critical risk, ensuring therefore that our enforcement is targeted where harm is the greatest, And we will also use the risk insights to inform updates to policy and regulatory frameworks. So to conclude, looking at immediate priorities and what we expect from industry in the coming months, first priority is to finalize the Omni-risk return and integrate it into the IRS. Additional sector-specific data requirements, as I mentioned earlier, will be phased in over time. But for now, we expect industry to actually assess whether they have access to the required data, and if not, how quickly they can report on it. On further engagements, systems and process integration will continue with an industry pilot plan for 2026, as mentioned by the CIO in her part of the presentation. So that concludes my part of the presentation. I would like to thank you, and I will be handing over to Juanita to take us through the consultation and planned engagement activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Loraine. So my part, I think, is the part that everyone would be interested in terms of how do you communicate with us your queries, your questions, and your concerns after seeing the template of the risk return. So in our engagement plan, we have different ways of communicating on a targeted basis, in a general basis, and on an ongoing basis with industry. The general communication relating to the Omni-risk return would be the publication of it at the end of September, together with the explanatory note to which Loraine alluded to previously. We will also have a template on the Microsoft Forms platform that can be used to give us feedback on the template itself. Now, the form will be in the 12 sections. It will be divided into the 12 sections so that we can get very specific and targeted feedback on each one of the sections. That could be very valuable for us in using, and would make it also much easier for us to actually collate all the feedback and react to it in a timely manner. The consultation process will start on the 1st of October and end at the end of November. During this process, we have the publications and we have the template, and we will unfortunately not be able to accept any other comments after the 30th of November. This gives industry a 2-month period to give us feedback, which is longer than usual. We usually give a 6-week feedback process. But because of the importance of this tool, we're giving it a little bit longer time, and also because we realize that over December, there's not really an opportunity to give feedback on these type of tools that we want to use. We have to, however, say that if any feedback comes in and it's not in the format of the Microsoft Forms, we will unfortunately not be able to consider it, as we will only be working on that platform. We will also be having targeted engagements. So in September, we'll be having a special market conduct committee meeting where the template, where this presentation, the template and any questions that might arise from the associations will be addressed. And then after that, we're also open to engagements with individual institutions as and when the need arises. After, of course, seeing the template and considering the explanatory note to it. Further to this, we have this webinar that we are recording for you now that will be on all our social media platforms, together with the virtual workshops that we will be having in November. We will be having 3 virtual workshops in November, where it will be a platform for industry to come to us after considering the template and asking us targeted questions. If there is a need, as Marrelie also indicated earlier, that a specific institution or an association wants to come and meet with us and have further discussions specifically regarding a part of the template or any concerns in general on the template, a meeting can be requested. The request can be sent to the inbox that we created. And as you can see on the screen, we have the link there for all comments. And if you have any queries or would like to request a meeting, it will be based on capacity, whether we would be able to actually meet on individual basis and how many meetings we will be able to have. But we are also confident that after having the virtual workshops, that a lot of the queries that the explanatory note couldn't answer, we would have been able to answer. If we look at how we will facilitate the workshops, like we said, it would be on a Microsoft Teams platform. It's going to be an open invitation to all the sectors to attend. It is 2-hour sessions at a time, and it will be linked to certain sections in the return. So we will be talking about sections 1 to 4 in the first workshop, then 5 to 9 in the second workshop, and then 10 to 12 in the third workshop. The workshops will be in the beginning of November. We have arranged them in such a manner that we can finalize all workshops by the 10th of November, still giving enough opportunity afterwards if there needs to be further individual engagement. The workshops, although the return is applicable to all sectors and all financial institutions, will however be limited to a number of 250 participators. Apologies. The reason for the smaller groups is to make it actually a more effective workshop and to ensure that we can actually get through all the questions and not frustrate anyone with wanting to ask questions and not being able to. So it will definitely be on a first come, first serve basis. The workshops will, however, like I mentioned before, be recorded, and it will be on all our social media platforms for further reference, and links to that will also be on our website, where we have a specific allocated area just for all information that relates to the Omni return. So if we look at the next slide, here you can see an overview of the engagement and consultation plan. Like we said, in September, we have the special MCC meeting. We have the publication of the return with the explanatory note and the form. Then from 1 October to 30 November is the consultation period, where we have the general workshops that are live workshops that we will be recording and have the links to, as well as targeted engagements when needed. And then 1 December, the comment period ends. Another important part to note is that in these workshops, it also allows us to answer questions fast and directly and in real time. And this will also assist for any unnecessary comments or repeating comments as part of the feedback process, which will then also enable us to work through all the feedback much faster and make the necessary adjustments to the return so that we can still be within the timelines of the IRS project and when the pilot is scheduled. I will now be handing over to Athule, that will be doing a Q&A session with some of the most important questions that you might have on your mind. Athule.
Thank you very much, Juanita. Before we wrap up, I'll be asking a few key questions that we've received from industry. These questions I directed to the team to help provide you with clarity and support. I'm going to start with you, Akashen. I'm going to ask you 2 questions regarding the feedback template. The first question is the number of characters limited? And if it is, why? The second question will then be, will it be provided in Word format for the bigger groups to compile comments? Can you please start with the first question?
Thanks, Athule. Yes, the characters are limited. However, you will have enough characters to provide your lengthy answer that you need to provide. And the reason why we have a limitation on the characters is because we're asking feedback on each question. The second part, the second question Yes, we will be providing it in a Word format. However, the answers will only be accepted via the MS forms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akashen. I'm going to ask Loraine to come in for this question. Loraine, will feedback from industry be acknowledged or summarized after the consultation?
So yes, a summary report will be compiled and shared once all inputs have been reviewed. While we will not respond to each comment individually, it will provide an overview of the feedback received, and it will also give you an explanation of the approach that we've decided to adopt. Thank you.
Thank you, Loraine. Juanita, will there be enough time after the workshops to meet with industry associations and institutions if needed?
Thank you, Athule. Yes, like I said in my presentation, we will try and have all the workshops. They are scheduled so far for the first week in November, the last workshop being on the 10th of November, which still allows for some time for individual engagements afterwards before the end of November, if there is a need to have a specific individual engagement. Thanks.
Thank you. Marrelie, will there be enough time to prepare after consultation period ends?
The implementation will not be immediate. A roadmap and a clear timeline will be communicated after the process. At this point, I also have to point out that we are still having internal discussions as to how we're going to roll it out. Will it be a process where all entities will be reporting from the same time going into the future, or will we do a staggered roll out where we start with certain industries and move on to others? But we will provide clear communication as we move along the process. Thanks.
Thank you. I've got one last question, and this one is for Loraine. Loraine, I'd like to know, will the return apply to all licensees or will it be tailored to specific sectors?
So yes, the return will apply to all licensees, as it was actually specifically designed to create a baseline view of risks across the financial sector. And to establish this baseline, we require consistent data from all institutions. However, you may still be required to submit sector-specific information, as we have mentioned earlier, but these will only be introduced over time and in phases.
Thank you to all of you for these responses. I do hope this Q&A has clarified some of the key questions. And if you're watching and still have queries, please use the channels listed in the communication pack or visit the FSCA website for updates. I now hand over to Marrelie.
Thank you, everyone. This is now the end of our webinar. I just want to add two last comments before we say goodbye. So as Juanita mentioned, we welcome certain targeted engagements. However, we definitely have resource constraints. Efficiency and coordination in getting comments is very important to us. So we already met with the Industry Association in the past week to introduce the Omni-risk return in the same manner that we did, that we are doing now. And we would appreciate it if the industry associations would facilitate targeted sessions between our team and members of certain specific sectors where some questions and concerns may arise that we have not addressed. We would, however, request that these engagements be targeted at a specific agenda that these organizations then set ahead of the meetings. Lastly, as mentioned in my introduction, the Omni-risk return will only be successful should all stakeholders work together towards rolling it out and implementing it. A big contribution to the revised approach to market conduct risk reporting were the comments that we received from industry following the publication of the Omni-CBR in 2023. We again ask that you collaborate with the FSCA in developing and rolling out the solution. This solution will result in a future fit approach to supervision that supports consistent, accurate, and efficient risk-based oversight within a centralized digital platform. We look forward to future consultation on the Omni-risk return, and we thank you for your time.